All right, call the meeting to order. Auditor Heitman, will you lead us in the pledge for this?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. First item on the agenda is to approve our agenda. Motion by Weiss, second by Dinger. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. This time we'll open the meeting up for any public comments. Anyone wish to address the commission this morning? On any topic that isn't on the agenda? Online, on the phone? Seeing no one, hearing from no one, we'll move on. Next up is Resolution 2025-18, Proclamation for National Public Safety Telecommunications Week. And I think we have some guests in the waiting room. Good morning, Sarah.
Good morning.
Oh, good morning.
Good morning.
I brought a couple dispatchers and Jim's with me.
All right, good morning.
Thank you.
Morning.
Yeah.
How are you this morning?
Very well, thank you.
I think we have a proclamation that Commissioner Dennard is going to read, is that correct?
Sounds like it.
All right.
Official proclamation, Brown County, South Dakota. Whereas emergencies may occur at any time that require law, fire, or medical services. And whereas when an emergency occurs, the prompt response of law, fire, and emergency medical professionals is critical to the protection of life and preservation of property. And whereas public safety dispatchers are often the first and most crucial contact our citizens have with emergency services. And whereas the safety of law enforcement officers, firefighters, and EMTs is dependent upon the quality and accuracy of information obtained from citizens who contact the Brown County Communications Center. And whereas public safety dispatchers are the single vital link for law enforcement, fire, and emergency medical professionals by monitoring their activities by radio, telephone, and computer, providing them essential information and ensuring their safety. And whereas public safety dispatchers of the Brown County Communications Center have contributed substantially to the apprehension of criminals, suppression of fires, and treatment of patients in Aberdeen, South Dakota. And whereas each Brown County Communications public safety dispatcher has exhibited compassion, understanding, and professionalism during the performance of their duty in the past year. Now therefore be it resolved, the Brown County Commission declares the week of April 13th through April 19th, 2025 to be National Public Safety Telecommunications Week in Brown County, South Dakota, in honor of the dispatchers whose commitment, service, and sacrifice keep our county and citizens safe. April 15th, 2025.
Very good.
Thank you so much.
You bet. Thank you for what you do. I know Brown County ranks right up towards the top as far as being one of the better PSAPs in the state, so keep up the good work. We're proud of everything you guys do and thankful. So.
Well, we appreciate all the support we get from you folks too. We wouldn't be able to do that without your help, so it works both ways. So we do appreciate you guys as well. So
Yeah. I know the citizens of Brown County are a lot safer because of what you do, so thank you.
thank you all.
Thank you.
All right.
All right, appreciate it.
Thanks, have a safe day.
Thank you.
Immediate motion on that. Second.
Okay, motion by Jenner, second by Weiss, to approve the proclamation. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next up, first reading of the following ordinances. Ordinance 292.
Ordinance 292, an ordinance amending Title IV, Second Revision, Brown County Ordinances as amended, to rezone certain described property filed by petitioner Donald and Jolene Bond to go from mini ag district to lakefront residential district.
Is there anyone here to speak to ordinance 292? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve.
Move. Second.
Motion by Gage, second by Dinger. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next up, ordinance 293.
Ordinance 293, an ordinance amending Title IV, Second Revision, Brown County Ordinances as amended, to rezone certain described property filed by petitioner Donald and Becky Wegleitner to go from Ag Preservation District to Mini Ag District.
Is there anyone here to speak to ordinance 293? Seeing none, entertain a motion to approve.
Move.
Motion by Dennert,
Second.
second by Gage. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next up, Dirk Rogers, Highway Superintendent, with the right-of-way and a department update. Morning, Dirk.
How's it going?
Going great, and you?
Pretty good.
You're on time.
Oh, I've been there a while. We got a right away first, was it in the packet?
It was, yeah.
Yeah, I just need your original for them to sign.
Okay. I recommend it. It's a little bit of a wiggly deal, because I've never been a fan of hooking onto the culverts out of Richmond that are under the road. But it's been going on forever, and we make it pretty clear to them that we still reserve the right, if we gotta come out and do something for the road, it'll get unhooked, and you'll have to pay to rehook it and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's really no different than, like a water line, well, not yet, how we react to it, the ownership's a little different, but like a water line, they're gonna bore under for the cattle water that's on the other side of the road, you know, it's things like that. If we gotta do something with it, they bear the cost of it, so. Outside of that, I recommend it. I hope people out there use a little common sense, as far as building on top of it, and Scott can probably attest to it. There's a couple things that have been built out there where I'm like, you know, your floor cracked 12 minutes after you poured it, there's probably, you know, and there's at least one garage I can think of that's poured right on top of a pipe that runs through their property, you know, and, they don't last forever.
Right.
So, anyway, outside of those comments, I would recommend that we approve it.
Okay, motion by Weiss.
Second.
Second by Dinger. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Now, I got about 10 items on an update, unless you guys fiker me and the list gets longer, but, first thing is, we're working on the Rafe culverts. We're actually putting them in right now. B&B is doing them. We're working on the ones on the north side of Mina. And I'll get with Lynn at a later date, because the money that we're putting from our crew to contribute, plus the bill that we'll get from B&B, we can take 80% of that out of the Rafe funds and move it into the 311 or however it works out. But Lynn and I will visit about that later. I'm hoping not to have to come back at the end of the year and say, hey, I need spending authority for that money, you know what I mean? But, I do not intend to do that, but we'll see what happens. I mean, so far, prices, I'm not gonna say they're good, but they're not as bad as they could be on a lot of stuff, so at this point, I'm hoping that we can just leave that in there and you can use it for next year, but we'll see what happens. Elm Lake Bridge. I wish I wouldn't have been so damned idealistic when the first bid came in 200% of the estimate. I just couldn't get myself to award that or recommend awarding it. So they denied them all. They bid it again, got no bidders. And so it's still on the table, but the DOT's even trying to figure out how to proceed. I had a real quick conversation with a couple alternatives this morning. One might be tying it to a state project in the proximity, if that's a possibility. The other thing is there are a couple of items that are causing the apprehension from the bidders, being the sheet piling and riprap, because the frickin' bridge is in the middle of the lake. So,
Hard to get to.
exactly. And if you can imagine having to drive sheet piling all the way down both sides of that, it gets to be a little daunting and expensive, and I think that's where they're getting. So I'm trying to figure out, and then to throw on top of that, that particular bridge has very favorable funding for the county. I believe our match is only like 5.4% on it. It's actually some of the free Trump money from the first tour. That's, again, our bridges are really getting in quick, but, so we're gonna just kind of see what happens there, but I'd kind of proposed, well, why don't we try pulling out the pieces that are making the bridge guys nervous and see if we can use a different contractor for the site prep, but you know, moving that money and how that goes, we'll have to figure out how much of that they'll let us do. Because like I said, right now, we have to pay for 5.4% of it. If we start switching it around, it might go up for as far as what our contribution is. The bridge isn't the greatest, you can't drive trucks over it, but it is still functioning for the lake people to get from one side to the other, so. But not an ideal thing, I have not run into that before, where we've bid bridges a second time and then got bidders. I have not run into it where we've, you know, had a horrible set of bids and then the second time didn't get any, so, we'll see what happens. Staying with the topic of happy bridges, Sand Lake, next week, Lynn, if you could put it on the agenda, I'll discuss load limits again, and then also I'd like to set the bid date for that next week. So I'll have the contract up. I thought we were closer, but they need another week to get some of the contract documents put together. We'll be bidding that locally. Gotta double check the money. I think it's, when we switch it to the other program, it should be an 80%. I think it's 81.19, and then, but I think we gotta pay it up front. I just have to double check that. And if that does happen, there's an opportunity to apply for like 80%, I think it is, or 70% of the state's portion. So if you stick with me here, you get 70% of the 80%, something like that, up front to help you float it along. We'll see how quick that Sand Lake project will be set up. We'll get it bid here, like I said, and hopefully like end of May or something. And then, the completion date will be next year with the potential of the bridge being out through the winter, and we'll have to make accommodations for all that, but we will. That'll keep the price down, and it'll get it out there now, and I really we're this far with it, I wanna get it to a bid, and that'll also should help to keep the cost down a little bit. It doesn't have the exact same challenges, obviously, it's in the refuge, but it's not the same as doing it out in the middle of the lake, so hopefully.
Physically, it's easier.
Yes, hopefully we won't have as much trouble there. And spinning off the Sand Lake project, Road 16, we're not gonna wait till next year to do that. We'll pave everything this year, that isn't like right up by the bridge. I don't know what that distance is, but let's just say a couple hundred feet either side of the bridge, we'll leave gravel because we're just gonna tear it out here in a little bit anyway, and the rest of it will get paved. Okay? You'd asked me about that. Yeah, and I was hem-hawing around the day you asked me, but I'm a little more comfortable. As you know, when you do estimating, like when Lynn sends me the stuff and says, we have to do the budget for 2026 here in about 2 weeks, you know, your estimate at that point is like a 60 or 70%, and then as you work your way closer, and now as we're actually doing it, you always hope that you're right, but you get more clarity the closer you get to it as far as what your schedule's gonna be, and the weather's been sweet, so that's been positive. Anyway, so 16, so there's not gonna be a deviation in the map there for the most part. We should get that done. Road 14, which, you know, was a few years out, but obviously it's got some wear on it or has some issues, so we're probably looking at moving that up a little bit. Of course, the challenge is doing that in an economically acceptable manner, of course, but I had them look at that for a hot in place, which we have never done before. I've seen a few of them. We haven't done one in Brown County. It's like our cold, or it's like anything we do, you gotta have the right candidate. You don't, you know, go out and do this on just any road. So, the other thing is, since I have no experience with it, I can't eyeball it. I can't drive down the road and go, oh yeah, there's a candidate. So a guy who allegedly could do that came and looked at it, and he said it at least at first glance, would be worth pursuing as a candidate. So that might be what we end up trying, or what my recommendation for trying on 14 will be. And that's, again, it's not the same as a 2-inch overlay, which would be like 1.4 million or so for those 7 miles. This would be run about 90,000 a mile, and you basically rearrange and recompact and retreat and rejuvenate, I think is the actual word, you know, the top 3.5 inches or something like that. So if you have something with a lot of deep, you know, base failure in it, you can't do that, you know. which is why we spent a lot of time doing full depth milling all
Mm.
these years, because of mostly trying to straighten out the base stuff.
Well, you and I had a chance to talk about that a little more in depth a week ago, and it's a different process. It actually takes equipment and heats
Yep.
the surface up. And the original processes took a lot of equipment and a lot of
Oh, yeah, yep.
mobilization, but they went a whole lot deeper, whereas this is a little more mobile. It's basically 2 semi-trailers, you said.
Yep, so to Mike's point, that's another reason why we haven't done it before. And you guys are the ones that didn't put any time on the agenda, so don't be mad about me talking too much. But what he's talking about is, I've looked at this in the past, but the technology and the process has finally gotten advanced enough. The traditional process that most of the hot-in-place folks use is about a quarter-mile long, and it's a whole bunch of giant heaters on trailers, and, you know, you don't turn it around here and head up Elm Lake with it. This particular process is contained in about the equivalent of 2 semis. And the difference, like Mike was alluding to, you don't have this massive amount of heat and all these heaters that you're dragging over the road, so your penetration for this process isn't as deep. Which again all goes back to making sure you got the right candidate matched with the right process.
It's got a good base underneath it, and it needs
Yep.
the top 2-3 inches
Exactly.
rejuvenated, but if it doesn't have a good base, then it's not the process.
So basically, this thing heats it up, throws some rejuvenator, chemical, which I still think all that stuff's Dawn dish soap, but whatever. They charge you $6,000 a gallon for it and say it's rejuvenator, but you throw that out in front of it, and then tines come through, that asphalt's all heated. I mean, it literally looks like a frickin' Thatcher or something. It just rips through and roughs it all up, and then the screed comes over and puts it back. So if you need to add structure, it wouldn't be a good project. It wouldn't be a good project. But at that price, if in 5 years, then maybe we can go back and slap a thin overlay on it, or you can chip seal it, you know what I mean? I'm trying to keep the upfront costs down. It's not always, sometimes you're doing the 25-year plan, or you're hoping what you're doing is gonna last a long time, like 14 north of North RDO. We've done some things beyond the normal there because of the traffic. And then there's other times where the total you might get into that road over 10 years might end up exceeding your initial cost, but you didn't have the money at the initial cost. So, same reason I buy old cars, you gotta put oil in, right? You're making your payment when you put the oil in there.
Well, you're looking at ways to try and include it, stay within the budget that makes sense, and what I'm getting is that you're not totally set on it, but you're thinking at this point, if you
Yep.
consider what you might do, that this might be a
Yep.
good opportunity to try that.
I think it's a good opportunity, and it's cost-effective, at least in theory, compared to the alternatives. And when we did the cold in place from Warner to Stratford there, the first one we did, and then did our surface and stuff, then that wouldn't include the micro that we put on it a few years later. I'm just saying that original process, whatever that is, 11 miles or 9 miles, it was $800,000 less our upfront costs when we did it. Okay, now, again, it's like me sitting here telling you about this hot in place. That was the first one we did. It seems to be doing okay. We did another one out there Richmond, that seems to be doing okay. So that's what I'm saying. You're not always gonna hit a home run, but in that particular instance, I mean, compared to what we would have done if the cold wouldn't have worked, it was $800,000, basically $100,000 a mile cheaper or less expensive to do that, so.
Well, none of it's gonna last forever, but if it
No.
lasts a long enough time that you get your value out of it, and then it gives you
Cycle
the
back
opportunity.
around,
Right.
cycle back around to it, which is exactly what our $4.2 million paving project is, about 5 years worth of this cycle back around stuff that we haven't been able to get to. Okay, Mansfield, we'll be paving west of Mansfield on the gravel. We milled that up last year, and it's actually pretty hard, so. And we'll start actual asphalt patching as soon as they make hot mix. not as a directive factor, but that is a consideration in the load limits when we take them off, is we have to make sure we have the ability to, like, if something bad happens, we can react to it. So I like to minimize the time between when the hot plants are firing up and the load limits come off, within reason, you know.
Okay.
Okay, patching.
Because you guys have been hauling material, but you're staying within the load limits.
Yeah, and if anyone's heard that, we are, you know, they want to stop and weigh one of our trucks. That was another, I shouldn't bring up former Commissioner Fikert again, but that was an attitude I took from him one day, because we're on him like, Dennis, we're legal, you know, we're hauling, you know, we're 2 ton an axle down or whatever, and, well, it doesn't look good. You know, the other guy, well, they can all haul legal too, you know. Our economics of it are a little different when we're gonna pay the people that are there anyway, I understand that, you know, but, yeah, so we've actually been, we've been doing pretty good with that. You guys have probably followed in the, HR reports.
Mhm.
We're down, you know, I'm not gonna say we're down a couple guys, we've had a couple, you know, we rearranged one guy, and, like I said before, at this time, I think we're all right, because we contracted quite a bit of work this year out, so, but again, I may come back at a later date and say, Jerry and Mike just went back over the weed board, and that's usually that's a little bit of a buffer that sometimes I forget about too, and honestly, I can't say enough about those 2 guys. I don't know how they are spraying weeds, they must be all right, because they haven't been fired yet, but, as far as what they do for us at the highway department, I'm really gonna be sad when we have to go through the process of trying to find guys that wanna spray weeds and then come out to the highway department and be productive as well. That's gonna be a challenge. I've been pretty spoiled with those guys. The only other thing I was gonna touch on is the Dakota Street, Richmond Guardrail, May 5th, did I say that?
Yep.
I know I sent you guys an email, I don't know, or a text, I don't know if I'd put that on here. Is Dakota Street, it's moving forward. I don't know how much we wanna go into detail without going into exec for contracts on it. I don't really need to, it's just, if you saw that last version of it, I think we're getting to the point there. The only thing that's not defined is the moving costs, you know, the cost from year to year will change, so we're kinda looking more at putting a formula in there that you could use each year rather than, just saying it's $47, you know, because that'll be a moving number, so.
Sure.
But I think it's very close to getting resolved, and I wanna add in one more comment, because I took a beating at this is the part where you guys can tell me to be quiet, because you're in here too long, but I took a beating from the DOT at the highway superintendent's, conference. Well, they got a beating back, of course, but, it was on how we went about doing the Dakota Street thing. And I told a couple of you this story already, but I didn't make it into the initial start of this discussion. I was trying to, and then the Pennington County guy sent me a text and said, you better get in here, because the DOT's running you over with an 18-wheeler. And they weren't happy about the collaboration prior to getting, I thought I saw my friend Carl in there, prior to getting to the committee thing. And I kind of basically, I didn't swear, too bad. I just kind of told them that I'm more wired to take care of my problems. Now, the law that we passed that Carl helped us with is a little more specific. I mean, you could use it anybody could use the same law, the way that we have. As a matter of fact, I've even shown our agreement to some people as far as the form goes, you know. There's other ways you can accomplish the same goal, and I think we're gonna continue to do that. The unexpected consequence of what we passed, which to me isn't a consequence at all, but that's how it was portrayed, is in the places that they can't get an agreement, like we've been able to do, it hasn't been the smoothest thing, but we're gonna get it. These things get turned over to the Secretary, I shouldn't giggle, get turned over to the Secretary of Transportation to be adjudicated, and one of these is over $50. So I do appreciate that, despite whatever the public's perception of the relationships between all of us local governments, you don't have to go too far down the road, and we're doing just fine. But my point is, we got to the point, it worked for us, and that was finally, I think, as I was standing up on the chair yelling at them, that it worked for me, you know, it'll work for you, if you have a similar situation, it'll work for you. They're mad because we didn't sit down at a table, and, you know, I'll admit, I'm not the best at playing with others in collaboration, because it takes too damn long, and you end up losing the sight of what your goal is. So I'm not a politician. But at the end of the day, I just said, look, we solved our problem, and I go, well, how long you been working on the Lawrence County problem? He goes, well, 7 years. I go, how much longer are you gonna be working on it? Oh, a couple more. I go, that's funny, mine's taken care of, Larry, you know, and so there's gonna be more of those coming. They're gonna be coming from the code, or what do developers do? From the development and the annexation side, because currently law allows you to use the county road if you're annexing and building a development, and there's really nothing you can do, but they're under no obligation to take it over, right? So there's gonna be some of that that's gonna get fixed up, but the DOT requested that.
Well, it'll be simpler and easier and cleaner if, you know, every time there was an annexation, it was both sides of a road for a mile.
Right.
But that's not the way that it works.
No.
You take, you know, 100,000, 2,000 feet on one side, and then, you know, who's responsible for it, you know, and for how long,
Yep.
and all the rest of those kind of things. And we've had agreements, you know, since counties came into place. We have mile line roads that we share bridges and
Yep.
responsibility for maintenance and snow removal and the rest of it. And there's apples and oranges and bananas in that fruit mix, and, you know, if two parties can agree to get along, it may be different than somebody else does it, but as long as it gets done, then sometimes it takes a while to have that conversation and come to whatever that agreement's gonna be.
Yep, I agree. But don't play with the city over $50. So.
150,000 maybe.
Yeah. So, well, that's my ramblings. I don't know if you guys got anything else. I tried to be very thorough, and it's fine. You can come up with something not on my list.
Covered lots of stuff.
Scott?
I just got a question, as
Yep.
long as Dirk's here. Back in the legislative session, Dirk and I visited about the Richmond Lake spillway with school and public lands a little bit, with no detour planned for that road closure out there. And I told him that I'd like him to give us a call so we can set up a little meeting. I'm gonna put a little pressure on him here, hopefully this week, about making that happen, so that we can discuss that. It sounded like there wasn't any money or anything set aside. I've got emergency services that are kind of squealing about what are they gonna use to get to them populated areas. You know, we're gonna have to, you know, go all the way around the lake, because that's where dirt plows, or just what the plan is. But just so you know, we're putting put a little heat on Greenfield and Nagel out there to try to help us out, so.
As you should.
Their engineers are trying to figure out how they're gonna get 200 feet deep to put that thing in there.
I think they got bigger fish to fry, but this is a big fish on my plate, so.
So, now to your comments, and I'm gonna walk carefully, there's no project management folks there.
Right.
Okay, so the gentleman that was here is the guy that designs dams, and he worked for the BLM forever, and he did a fine job with that, but he's not necessarily gonna be like the project manager.
Right.
And the guys at School and Public Lands are not,
It's not what they do.
no. So, at great risk, and if we can at least put this to some frickin', you know, to some point, I expect that we'll get reimbursed for it, okay?
But we gotta figure it out.
Yeah, I mean,
It's up to us.
it is. Now, I hate to say that, and I hate that, because I know what happens. The minute you take something over, there you
Your
go.
baby, yep.
Yeah. I expect to be reimbursed for it, okay? Scott, I expect to be reimbursed. The two things I would propose, and I'm willing to do both, and that's why I called you the other day. I couldn't remember who you talked to at Lincoln Township. I was gonna call him. But the first one would be the Brook Brown Road. And I'm saying that one, I haven't looked at any of these from the perspective that we're gonna run 5,000, we're gonna run 1,500 cars on them. But the Brook Brown Road would be one, that's because we use it, or whatever that section line is, we use that for.
127.
127. Everybody in the world but the county highway department uses those numbers. We use the road numbers, and we need, oh, so that, then I have to go look that, okay, that one's 11. But anyway, whatever that one is, straight shot over to 281. I will not commit to dust proofing at this time. I'll commit to plowing all the snow. We have 2 guys that run out there. The only hiccup in the whole thing is 2 guys usually go down 13 out to 6 and 13. One of those guys will peel off and go north and plow the detour, and the other one will just have to, if we have to add another thing, to run out to 6 and 13. But the only difference for us on plowing the snow is that. So,
If we get snow.
right, we're not getting snow anymore. Okay, so that's one, and then the other one I'm gonna throw in there because people are sheep and they're gonna go whatever.
Shortest distance.
Is, we'll talk to them about coming down to 13 as well. And we would take responsibility, once the detour goes on there, we would take responsibility for maintenance, plowing snow, graveling it, but we'd have to make sure what the shape of it is to begin with. And it's gotta expect to be reimbursed.
How about people are sheep? That one too.
Yeah.
That's true, they'll take the shortest route.
You're trying to work it out by saying that.
So I was
Yeah, go
talking
ahead.
about this with Drew the other day, because I'm doing a bunch of work out of Richmond, and 127th is the obvious, the Brook Brown Road is the
Yeah.
obvious winner on that one, I think. It's a straight shot, it's a good road, it's not beat up. Maybe you gotta be reimbursed for a couple truckloads of gravel if we need to or whatever, but that road, there's no reason why that road shouldn't be able to be traveled. As far as going around the lake and taking Richmond Road down,
I
you know,
don't follow you. Going
the-
around the
what is
lake.
that?
The west side.
Oh, over here?
Like, let's say someone's coming from Aberdeen and they live on West Bridge Road up there, and they come all the way down 129th, which is, which county road is that? 13. They're gonna have to drive all the way around the lake to get to where they're going. So I would venture to say that half of the traffic is gonna go down 127th, and the other half is gonna go on 13. And maybe more so on 127th.
Yeah, I don't think anybody, so.
All of your North Shore
let me-
Drive people,
Where's
West
the
Bridge
big,
Road,
Yeah, the
West
North Shore
Drive.
should go down 127.
No,
Right,
there's,
sure.
nobody is gonna, nobody up here is gonna drive 8 miles, like, first off, nobody here is gonna drive 8 miles around here either way
Right.
to be a mile from their house.
What's the shortest distance?
Yeah, trust me, I mean, I'm with you on this side. The amount of change in the traffic on this side is gonna be like,
minimal.
It-
They
it
already
might-
take it 13.
Do you think
Yeah.
the West Bridge Road people will still go on 127th for the most part?
I think they will.
I would say right now, nobody goes, none of these folks over here, nobody
Goes
west
south
of
with
West
it.
Shore Drive goes west.
Goes over the bridge.
Right,
No.
right. Currently, I agree.
Yeah, but the only people that might do it would be, but even then, what gets me is, and if this is an angle, if they start angling this for us to pave it, I'm gonna lose my frickin' mind, because there's,
I think that's what I said.
Yeah, Dirk will lose his mind.
Yeah.
You're talking the difference
That's what I
between
said.
going on 127th or the Brook Brown Road
Right.
to 281, or going over a mile and dropping south the 2 down to 13, is what you're talking about?
I'm
To get to
talking about doing both of those. So just put that over here, we can
As-
negotiate
as
that later.
designated,
That's
yeah.
the whole frickin',
That's the
because,
two options you're
Yeah,
talking
yeah.
about, on where the traffic would actually go.
so, when we paved 13, when we did the cold in place out there, we picked a detour. You guys drive here, here, and here. This is where they drove. It doesn't matter when you're in here and you've got good gravel roads all the way around, they'll go
Yeah.
wherever.
You can have it
But
designated.
We gotta
alternate
have
route
it
once you-
designated for the emergency response people, because I don't want them
That works
doing
and
it.
makes sense.
Right, so, anyway, we're getting off base here, but what I'm trying to answer to you, Drew, is, I sat with this map and I said, who the hell is gonna drive all the way around here? You're still gonna drive on, so like, if you live on North, or East Shore Drive, or, what, is that still East Shore?
Yeah.
you're just gonna come over here and you're gonna go shooting straight in. Even
Right.
if you didn't wanna drive on the gravel, you're gonna drive on the same amount of gravel to go
You
around
just
it.
have to drive on the gravel.
It's
Right,
4 miles
so-
gravel versus 2.
Yeah, so
Okay.
over here, these would be the only folks on,
West Shore.
West Shore that might, but they still don't have to drive any further. They just have to drive on 3 miles or 4 miles of gravel instead of asphalt. It's no further for them to come up here and come down. I mean,
Yeah.
the fact that we can put a detour in that's no longer
Mhm.
than for anybody
Just
is a
gravel.
real plus.
Yeah.
So that's what, you hit a nerve, whenever we get out there, I gotta learn to do better, but I sat with the map and I go, there's maybe 3 or 4 people, if they're reasonable, that would follow the normal traffic patterns. There's only a handful of houses, I think, that would even remotely,
Right.
that this would be something where they would go, yeah, that's a better option than going up here and straight
The
in.
very south end of West Shore would be the only ones that would
Exactly.
make
Right.
sense.
But even for them, you just drive the same distance.
Yep.
If you
Yep.
come around, that's what I don't think, that's 1 mile, 2 miles. 3,
It's a ways.
1, 2, yeah, I think it's, if you're on,
Kinda
when I
in the
figured together, I think it's 8 miles to get from here to be a mile south of your house,
Yeah.
or 2 miles south of your house. And if you're on this side of the bridge, your life's no different.
Right.
Yeah, 127th, I think, makes the most sense because it doesn't increase mileage. You have to drive a little slower, and you have to deal with some gravel, but otherwise, it's no farther.
Like you said, that, would be the designated one for emergency vehicles, and then you're gonna make
Yeah.
sure
Do you agree with that?
that
Yeah,
it stays
we
passable.
drove that, 127th,
Yeah.
and I'm okay with that.
That's what we use
I
last.
drive that road quite a bit.
Well, at least you got snow removal and a straight shot, but when you come south down there, when you go over a mile and come south where you're thinking of that detour, not only that's, when you come up to that stop sign facing south to get on 13, that's a tough one, 'cause there's a ridge
And
there
then
down
there's a
to
hill.
there, so you got a tougher spot there. Plus, you got a lot of corners to make and everything where you're straight shot, and it's 1 mile less gravel is all
Yep.
you'd be saving.
And maintenance costs would be
But what you're talking about
lower,
is cooperating with the
you know.
township to say, we're gonna help you with that one too, because we know some of the traffic
Not
will
zero.
go that way.
Kinda, but yes, you gotta have a designated one, and then, but what's happened in these scenarios, and of course, your relationship with the township it's fluid sometimes, but the first time that we didn't, I'm like, oh, there's plenty of roads, don't worry about it. Well, pretty soon Aberdeen Township, Lincoln Township, Mercer, everybody wanted us to fix all their roads,
Mhm.
and I'm like, well, that's why we dedicate it, so. But anyway, that's what would be my recommendation. Straight in like that. This will be the 4th time we've used that as a detour. I mean,
And that's the simplest, 'cause it's real easy to figure out. You go straight north, take a left, and you get over there.
Yep, and,
That's what we like about it, there's no turn at the big
Yeah.
oak tree and,
Right.
It's simple.
I haven't talked to Lincoln
Lincoln
Township. I know that they're aware of it, but I haven't talked to
Yeah, and like you
them.
said, without somebody who's, in charge of it, like with DOT, that would be part of their process to say, we're gonna have a detour, and if it encompasses using a county road, they'll go turn around and put some improvements back into it, or there's some damage done and stuff, and that's just not part of this process, because it's not a DOT project,
It's no different than,
as much as we get along with them.
yes, they're our friend. It's just like the airport projects, and don't worry, Dwayne, I said I wouldn't go off on it, but the airport's gonna use the road by Butler there, 14, it's our road, it's gonna be a haul road for the project, and FAA projects have no money in them for haul road restoration, which is, every time I see a congressional delegation, I like to mention that to them, but, believe it or not, it's kind of a pain. I mean, the last one they did, we spent about 40 grand putting a haul road back together in the back door of the airport. And maybe that's our contribution to our essential air service or whatever, I don't, but.
Or we could just ask them to annex it.
Yeah, there we go. Well, they got part of it, that's another,
See, here we go.
that's where we're going after Dakota Street. No, but that, just so you guys are aware, that is a gap that,
Yep.
on airport funding, there's no money for There's
So-
no money for haul roads.
So I was under the well, this is maybe just the roads in the airport.
Yes.
Those are all added into the contract.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, but the reason they're using your road is because they just did the road going into there.
It's the most direct way in for the contract
They
to
just,
get there, yeah.
well, it is, but they just, the part of the last year's agreement was that they redo all the roads going into the airport. So now they don't wanna take them, they're gonna go right to the county.
I know, and that's one of the things that drives me bonkers, that, well, we don't wanna wreck inside the airport, that's fine, we'll wreck this county one out right outside the fence, you know?
Senator Perry, you got a question?
Yeah, just 4 quick questions.
4?
Yeah.
Good lord.
In the last 2 days, people have asked me questions. When are we actually gonna start with the Richmond project?
I mean, it's in, are you talking, what are you talking about, the spillway bridge?
Yeah. Just the dam stuff, the reconstruction process.
When's the road gonna be closed?
When are they not driving through there?
Yeah,
Okay, you can ask that question.
yeah, I can't actually answer that.
During, whenever Carl can't answer a question, he just said, that is a good question, thank you for asking.
No, it was probably, you know, they're still doing their analysis right now, and we're at it wouldn't be closed till, I would imagine, the start of the construction season 2026. So
Right.
let's say,
No way.
right, May, June of 2026 is my,
Optimistic.
So you don't think that anything will start yet this year?
No.
not that's gonna close
Okay.
the road.
All right, so I only lied to one person so far.
That's all right.
And then,
That's actually pretty good for you guys.
Yeah.
It's like AI, you know, just make stuff up, you
When
know,
do you think-
embellishment.
Once we start, what type of a finish time will it be? Is
2
it
years.
2 years, sorry, so
Two seasons.
finish before 28?
Yep,
Okay.
before the end of 28.
Fingers crossed.
And the detour, you went through some of that.
Yep.
And I know I had somebody on the west side tell me it'd be good to have their road built up because a lot of people are gonna be coming along there. And I said, I'm gonna see dirt pretty soon. And then, you know, somebody said, is there an actual plan that people could go and look at? And I said, I'm gonna go out on a limb here, there is a plan, but you can't go see it because I don't know where it is.
I would direct them to school and public lands,
Okay,
and, because that's where I got it, and they can decide, like, what I think that what we have, like, again, that 60-70%. I don't remember, Scott, what that last one we got was, but.
okay, so the 3 Scott guys will take care of telling people about what the plan is.
Plans are worthless, planning is imperative.
All right, that's all I had, sir.
Wow.
All right.
Thank you, though.
Thanks, Senator.
Okay.
All right, anything
else?
else?
You survived.
All right, you guys have a great day.
You as well.
Thank you.
Thank you for the update.
Sorry, I didn't mean to keep you.
No, that's fine.
Next up, Scott Mites, Emergency Management Director, with a couple items.
Good morning.
Thanks, sir.
Okay.
Didn't mean to bring up.
Oh, here you go.
There it is.
Hey,
There it is.
hey.
Run. Were you waiting outside until I got done?
Yeah, I've been trying to run you down, but where you been? You been working or what?
Well, it was like staying ahead of you, Steve.
He hadn't got a haircut. Morning, Doug.
Hi.
Don't forget to sign in. Don't forget to sign in.
Good morning.
Good morning.
First of all, I want to apologize, my first item here, I should have been in here a couple weeks ago, but it's been crazy busy with other stuff, so here I am today with it. But, back in, mid-March, I guess it was, we got notification, I think Lynn put the letter in your guys' packet, that the state was gonna be cutting our LEMPG grant funds that we receive from them through our office. They cut 10% last year and into early this year, and now they're gonna take another 35% of that, which LEMPG has changed over the few years. We used to get a little bit for salary and benefits and some of our other budget, and then it switched to just salary and benefits. Excuse me, and that's currently what it is right now. They pay for a certain percentage of our salary and benefits for Patty and I in our office. So with that cut, the state's telling me we're gonna lose about 24,000 and some change. That kinda hurts. They dropped us from 60, almost 70,000 to 44 something. Something to remember, we don't, and I did visit with Lynn on this, we don't budget with that amount in our annual budget, because we don't know what that amount is during budget time. So I don't wanna say it's free money, but it's money that comes in after the fact that just goes back into the general fund. So, again, just so you're aware, we're gonna be, some money short here come end of our fourth quarter, so.
Is that a result of a reduction in federal funds?
That is a
or
result
tightening the belt
in-
on the local level?
Yes, no, the state takes a portion of the LEMPG, and the counties get a portion of that.
Okay.
Most states do, I talked to North Dakota, they do somewhat the same thing that South Dakota does, and this is part of the government cuts that are happening. We also got notified our Homeland Security funds, which doesn't directly affect us financially, except for equipment, is also on hold. And that's, almost $400,000 that could potentially come through the county, or, a portion of it. So we're seeing lots of cuts with the current administration coming through. So I have put until I visited with you, we have our mass notification system. That was, we've kind of started last year, and then we put on hold until we was able to budget for it for this year. That's currently sitting at about $15,000. That is in my budget this year. I've been working with a few other, I know Lynn's office and a few other ones, to make that more than just an emergency management program. It would be Sheriff's Office, Lynn's office, possibly the fairgrounds, and stuff like that. So I guess my question is with that 35% cut, do you want me to trim that out of this year's budget? Do we want to continue as budgeted? What are your thoughts on that kind of stuff?
You said you hadn't been budgeting that?
No.
You haven't been including that?
No. Correct, Lynn?
Correct.
So if you haven't been budgeting it, no reason to cut it out? We're utilizing it after the fact, right?
Yep.
Well, you're talking about moving forward with it without
Right.
specific funds that you're anticipating.
So it
supplementing.
probably, like I said, we don't budget specifically, because again, we don't know what that amount is. They don't tell us until mid-year. And so again, I don't wanna say it's bonus money, but it's kind of bonus money that we get.
From an auditor's perspective, what would be the best way to proceed?
Hold on any commitments that would obligate funds we're not sure we're gonna get.
Yeah, but like with this mass notification thing, like he's talking to different offices, I mean, it'd be something that we could all split the cost. So it's not gonna all come out of Scott's budget too.
Sure, sure. Other departments could pick up the slack, okay?
I don't know how many of those offices, I haven't talked about their budget with this. So, I guess it depends on, I don't know what Lynn, if she has any extra funds sitting around. My current budget for this year is to be able to fully fund that, and, if we wanted to look at adding other departments next year when budget time comes around, we could do that. Share a little bit of that cost, to bring, my office's costs down. That's an option too.
Maybe do it for this year, the way we have been, wait a year and see where the dust settles and what.
Okay, and this,
what it
this may
takes.
come back like some of the other government programs. It may go completely away. I know there's some counties that have been talking about getting out. They did pull of our few requirements, like our exercise and stuff like that. We're still gonna do our exercise, we just don't have to follow all the government mandates for that, this year, but, we're still doing those types of things through our office. But they have dropped a few of those requirements that were part of that LEMPG contract, so. And like I said, the state has, actually shuffled some employees, to make their side in the office work, and, they've cut some training, funds and things like that. We've been able to find other sources for this, but, it's been kind of a bumpy road here this spring,
Okay.
so.
More to come.
If you're okay with me moving forward with the mass notification and our budget as normal, and we will kind of readdress it here.
Yep.
Hopefully we'll know a little bit more. I was hoping, you know, Secretary Noem with Homeland Security, you know, mentioned the FEMA office cuts. We've heard, I was kind of waiting to hear about, a little bit about that. There's been nothing with that information except the big headlines that said FEMA's going away, but we haven't heard, you know, what's all gonna, because of that. So I'm guessing we're gonna have a lot of changes before the end of the year, so, which we all kind of know, so. Okay, perfect, thank you. Any other questions on that?
No, sir.
Burn ban. This is kind of a busy subject, I'll say. We're still getting quite a few calls from residents, farmers, etc. We had it on the agenda here a few weeks ago. That's when we got the snow. I thought maybe the snow was gonna stick around a little bit longer and we'd get a little bit more, but the Sunday after the snow, which was on Thursday, I think, we had a grass fire. So it's been crazy busy. I'm kind of torn with this on both sides, because the current ordinance that we have wrote and have in place seems to be working. We haven't had any fires related to control burns. We've had a few scares. We still have people that want to burn the day before a red flag warning. Usually red flags are put out the day before, or fire weather watch. They seem to want to burn. I've visited with the fire departments. Like I said, this is kind of a touchy subject. We're super dry yet, we all know that. There is a little bit of green coming, you notice the ditches and stuff like that. So I'm like I said, I'm torn with this at what we should do. The fire departments are okay with not implementing this, but again, I've had plenty of calls from the public wanting to implement it. So, yeah. Questions?
Maybe we just reply to those citizens that want us to enact it to self-police themselves and don't start any fires.
And
if it were as simple as that.
I did have one call, and I don't want to say it got heated, but we had a good conversation, and you know, the day that they were complaining about another person, there was nothing legal we could do, you know. I said our hands are tied. We're following the ordinance. This person's following the ordinance. So most of the fire departments, I did have a couple that said to put it on, but the majority of them said that they feel that the green is coming along. Yeah, we probably still got a few days of critical fire weather coming before it gets too green, but we're seeing the warmer temperatures, and I think that's helping. There's some moisture out there. You know, you walk out in some of these fields and you still get muddy boots. So I think if we can get some warm temperatures, I think the green will come. But so yeah, I don't know what your guys' thoughts, if you've been getting any calls or anything.
You know, I have gotten at least, you know, one on the subject, and just kind of giving it some thought. It was before the snow, you know, I'd say the week to maybe 2 weeks before that snow. It was getting pretty scary out there in terms of, you know, if a fire would have started on some of those windy days, or I know there was one night that the wind was 40, 50 miles an hour, it would have got, you know, wouldn't have been good. Luckily the snow came in, and I mean, most of that snow is, the snow and the moisture is pretty much gone, but you are just starting to see some green right now.
Right.
So in the pastures and the ditches, you're starting to see just a little bit of green, and it's going to get better and better, but yet the crops, you know, they're not in yet, and so it's going to be a little while before we start seeing anything green, you know, on the agricultural row crop fields. But yeah, we're starting to see some green in the pastures and the ditches, and that's going to help us. So it'd sure be nice if we'd get a half inch of rain, and it'd probably solve the whole problem.
Right. I do know, and not to interrupt you, Commissioner, but you know, if we can get some farmers in the field to create some fire breaks for us, because now, you know, with the no-till, I mean, it's just field after field after field. There's nothing, you know, I would love to see our farmers in the fall go out and put a 100-foot buffer around each field, you know, so that we have some man-made fire breaks like we used to maybe stop this stuff from running miles and miles and miles. But you know, I'm seeing some tractors moving, and I'm hearing some static that there's, you know, probably going to be some folks turning some dirt, and obviously those things will help too, you know. And the farmers have been outstanding at the fires we've had, you know, bringing tillage equipment, and because that's the only way you stop them wind-driven fires. There's no way a fire department can handle that. You'd be still out there for days.
There's a lot of tree piles this spring. I mean, I've seen a lot of tree piles out there that they took down belts.
Yeah, and that's, you know, that's the other thing, we preach and preach and preach to have these people that have tree piles to wait till there's some snow, but, you know, the other day when we were in 2 days of high fire danger, we got, well, the gentleman that was complaining, you know, his neighbor lit up a big tree pile, and it's like, really?
Yep.
So.
Commissioner Weiss, do you have a question?
Just a comment, and you mentioned that we've had a couple of occasions where people, you know, anticipating, because it does put out every day.
2 days.
Updated, what's coming, you know, in saying, okay, well, tomorrow it's gonna be extremely high, so we shouldn't. Well, I shouldn't do it the day before either, because we anticipate that that's going to be the condition, and it's just updated on a daily basis for that 2 days out. Common sense, or just, you know, using the rule of thumb, not only the day, but the day previous, because you have that notice, should not be a day
and I
for
think
doing
the
that as well.
majority of our residents
Respect that or
respect
understand
that,
that,
but
but it just needs to
we
be
have a
discussed.
handful that don't care,
Yeah,
you know.
or just get in a hurry, it's like, I wanna do this, I wanna do this, I'm gonna do it now quick, and
You know, I gotta farm that third of an acre because it's gonna make me rich. I don't know what the methodology is behind it, but, you know, it gets frustrating.
well, you know, it's like anybody else and anything else, you know, we have a winter like this where it's been relatively mild. You know, you got people out there working on projects they didn't anticipate they were gonna get to.
Yeah.
And once you get started on it, then you know, you push through it. And it's like, well, you know, regardless of the decision, whether it's burning or anything else, you know, you start making decisions on a marginal, you know, safety margin, and they're not always good decisions.
Do you think that there is maybe adjustments we can make to our ordinance to prevent these burn bans from coming into place? Because I would like to get to the point where we're seeing this ordinance, you say the ordinance is working, but we're still doing burn bans. So at what point can we get this, can we move this ordinance a little bit so that we can maybe just alleviate some of these
Well,
concerns?
I talked with a couple fire chiefs, just yesterday about this, and, you know, one of the things was, how do we get the public to be looking out days ahead, or can we rewrite the ordinance that says, you know, if it's red flag tomorrow, you can't burn today?
Yeah, whatever the forecast allows
Right.
for, we should be implementing that.
The problem that I see with that is people are not going to the Grassland Fire Index now. They're calling in, our dispatchers are doing them I'll say a favor, because we're asking them if they have looked at the ordinance and if they have looked at the Grassland Fire Index. We do not give them a yay or a nay.
Right.
Nor should we.
But we ask them, again, out of courtesy, to maybe help you out so that you don't get in trouble. And we got people that say, that's none of your business, I'm burning anyway, and they, you know, our dispatchers take the heat on that, and it's like, okay, I don't want to confuse them more by adding more language that says, now you need to go look at 2 days out. I don't know if that would make it worse or if that would make it better.
Well, at the end of the day, people are gonna break the law. We have a law
I
in
agree.
place, and I think that maybe we just need to be a little bit more careful about enforcing the law, but people are gonna break the law whether the law is there or not.
I agree. You know, maybe we need to put, I don't know what, if we can put some more teeth into, if you get a fine, instead of just a misdemeanor, you know, that says, hey, you're gonna sit in jail for 30 days, I don't know.
Well, we had talked when we instituted this about where the break point was, whether it was gonna be high or very high. High is relatively common.
Correct.
Very high, it takes a little bit more critical circumstance, and it's no different than instituting
weight limits. You know, it's a pretty good-sized county, and, you know, from 2 miles this way to the next 2 miles down the road, the conditions are not the same, but you're treating the entire county the same, because that's just the way it is. You can't, you know, micromanage some of that stuff. You know, that's kind of what I was alluding to, that, you know, just to make it a little more specific and encourage that, you're not gonna get complete compliance regardless of what it is, but to say, okay, the day of, it's excluded, and then also the day before, because you know a day in advance.
Yeah, if
it's moving up and down, you know, it's not today, but it's tomorrow, well, that means today's off limits too, if you're gonna follow the law.
And I, like I said, I think the majority of the population lives by that.
Right, and I don't think it's unreasonable to, you know, maybe consider making a change to do that, just to take an incremental step towards that.
I'm fine with that, but when we say that the majority is following the rules, we're gonna change the rules just so that these other minority, we can get a couple more of them to listen, well, we're
It's not
just,
uncommon.
we're just hosing over the ones that are following the law.
Right.
So, I'm not really for enacting the burn ban today, but I am interested in looking at this ordinance and seeing if it's, personally.
And I think, you know, we definitely can do that, and like I said, it's some conversation I've had with a couple of the fire chiefs about just that, Commissioner, so, I will get with Ross or whoever and see if, you know, what we think we can make sense and redraft that a little bit and.
Sure.
Like I said, we had considered high, and that would change the circumstances.
It would, and maybe.
A lot, because
and
high
maybe-
is pretty frequent.
Maybe it should. Maybe it should be high.
Mm-hmm.
It's worth considering.
Yeah.
You know, whether we do it or not, another question, but it's worth looking at, I think,
Right.
for sure.
But if you can say a day out and it's moving, and tomorrow's extremely high, that means today should be off limits.
Okay.
Because that stuff will carry over, especially if you're doing,
Right.
you know.
You know, if somebody's going out burning some grass or some patch of rushes or something, you know, those are a couple hour type of thing, and.
As long as it doesn't get into something.
Well, and that's just it. I mean, if you're burning it right along the river bottom, then I get no sleep. You know, so.
Yeah, and the concern is the guy that lights a tree pile and fire and it burns for 2 months.
Right.
You know, I don't wanna punish somebody because when he lit it, it might have been green, or,
Right.
or there might have been snow, and all of a sudden, it doesn't rain for 30 days, and it's like, well, what are you doing with the fire? It's like, well, no, you
Yeah.
started it.
Well, then you should have a 200-foot buffer.
Yeah,
around it.
oh, yeah, absolutely.
I lit one.
Absolutely.
I lit one in December, and it was still burnt in February, middle of February,
Mhm.
it was
Still.
still up again.
Yeah.
See, that'd be the problem with having the 2-day
Yep.
exclusion.
Right.
You can burn a slough in a couple hours and be done and have it completely out, but you can't burn a tree pile in a couple hours, so.
Yeah.
And
If you're
this
gonna exclude the day before, you could still be, if it's ideal, you could still
Yeah.
be doing sloughs, but you couldn't be doing tree piles, so.
It just goes down to doing due diligence.
Right.
Are we burning a tree pile when there's not a stitch of snow on the ground? Probably shouldn't be.
Yeah.
Correct.
In the tree pile, you know, if it's gonna be burning for 2 months, you can at least be aware of that and have some precautions, maybe whether it's a buffer or hopefully if it's, you know, summertime, you got some green grass or have your disc hooked up, you know.
Well, and
something
our
that-
ordinance does require you to have, you
Right.
know, either a man-made or natural, you know, break. But again, we got some people that don't even do that.
Yeah.
Right.
Let the judge take care of them.
Okay, I will,
Thanks, guys.
yeah, okay. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Scott.
you.
Have a good rest of your week.
Yeah.
All right, next up, approve and authorize chairman to sign the following fair contracts. That NHA swim team for stagehand services.
Move.
Motion by Weiss, second by Gage. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next one is Aberdeen Security Investigations for, provide security during the fair.
Move. Second.
Motion by Denner, second by Weiss. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next up, consent calendar. Lynn, turn it over to you.
Okay. Approve of the meeting minutes for the journal meeting on April 8th.
Motion by Weiss, second by Dinger. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Brown County Board of Equalization minutes.
Motion by Dinger, second by Denner. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Consolidated Board of Equalization.
Move.
Motion by Gage. Second. Second by Dinger. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Claims.
Move.
Motion by Denner, second by Weiss. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
HR report.
Move. Second.
Motion by Gage, second by Weiss. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Disinterment permits.
Move.
Motion by Dinger,
Second.
second by Weiss. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Lease agreement.
Move. Second.
Motion by Gage, second by Denner. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Travel request.
Move.
Motion by Denner, second. Second by Dinger. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Lottery permit for the Elm Lake Action Committee.
Move. Second.
Motion by Gage, second by Weiss. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
And approve the sponsorship agreement.
Move. Second.
Motion by Denner, second by Weiss. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Is there any other business come before the Brown County Commission this morning? We've had a request to go into exec for contracts, maybe legal update. Dustin?
You guys want some updates on, I don't have anything really to
Okay.
offer.
So contracts, and we, nothing from HR, so.
Move.
Motion by Weiss.
Second.
Second by Dinger. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Lights back on. We're back in session, out of exec with no action as a result. Is there any other business come before the Brown County Commission this morning?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Denner, second by Weiss to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. We are adjourned.